Hey, welcome back! Today we're going to make a little Smurf village out of buttercream, isomalt, and just a little bit of fondant. So let's get started. So for the base of each cake, I used a small cupcake size cake, and then the tops of them, I used a half circle silicone pan to bake some little tops of the mushrooms. This way I didn't have to do any carving, they were already a nice round dome shape. The little blue cakes that you'll see me using here actually came from another video where I was trying to make different color batters using natural food colorings. I started with this green mushroom and I wanted to make it ombre, so I started with one color on the bottom and a lighter color on top, blended them a little bit, and then I went around and smoothed the frosting over the top of the entire thing. Now we're gonna need a little world for our mushroom house to live in, so I covered this cake drum with modeling chocolate in a sandy sort of color. And all the buttercreams you see me using are actually colored with natural food colorings. If you want to see how I did that, you should check out my natural colored buttercreams video. Now here's our first little mushroom house. After setting him on his board, I decided I'm definitely going to need a couple more mushroom houses for this scene to be filled out. Since these are little houses, I carved an opening in the base of the mushroom, and then I'm going to fill it with buttercream details to make it look like a door. You could also pipe the buttercream directly on top, but I was curious to see if this effect would, add anything to the design by having it set in there. Now that I know how big the doors are going to be, I can kind of make my little Smurfette figure to scale. So I made her base of her body out of fondant, and I used an edible food paint to paint on the whites of her eyes. For her hair, I just piped out some nice light yellow buttercream. And then her hat, I sculpted it out of another piece of white fondant and placed it on top of the buttercream. For her eyes, I went in with a super tiny tip and used some black buttercream for the pupils. And I'll be sure to attach her legs later on. So I was inspired by looking at some stills from old Smurf cartoons. The villages always look super charming, just little clusters of mushrooms all together, and they all have little wooden details like windows and porches and doors and things like that. So that's where the design is coming from. I didn't have a firm idea when I started this cake. I actually sort of just made it up as I went along. I took the small cakes and buttercreams I had on hand and was trying to decide what would be a fun thing to do with them. And then after I had the general idea in my head, I knew it was going to be fun to add all the details. Now we're going to welcome our second mushroom house to the neighborhood. Now looking at these two mushroom houses together, I know I'm going to want some more detail to fill in the back of this cake to make the design look more complete. So I thought it'd be cute if I added some isomalt grass behind the mushroom houses. So first I poured out some strands of isomalt onto a silicone mat and I let them cool for a bit before handling them. After they were slightly cooled but still pliable, I bent them into some more lively shapes and gave them a little bit of motion. I like to taper the bases of each of the mushrooms in slightly and then give the bottom a rounded appearance so they look more plump and cartoony. Now believe it or not, this pink frosting was colored with cactus fruit powder. Now much in the same way, I went about smoothing this cake with my spatula and then my frosting scraper. And then for this one, for the spots on top, instead of piping them directly onto the cake, I tried doing an inlay to see how that would look so that the red color is even with the pink color in the design. So I carved out these little shapes, added the buttercream, and then scraped away the excess. And then as the outline was revealed, it looks like a sort of sharper edge to the buttercream. It took more time, but I was curious to see how it would look. I did like using this effect for the windows because if I added the blue buttercream for the window panes on the flat surface and then added the window frame on top of that, I thought maybe it would look a little more clunky with all of those layers of buttercream stacked one on top of the other. It's a small detail, but sometimes that's what makes your designs look a little more neat or put together. I definitely feel the same way about adding eyes onto little fondant figurines. A lot of times they look a lot better if you set them into the figure instead of just layering them on top. I didn't really start this design with a plan in mind. I just had a general idea of what I was going to do, and the rest of it kind of fell into place as I just goofed around with the buttercreams. And for this little wooden door, I used a round tip for a different texture, just to have some variety. I don't know why everything's cuter when it's tiny, but making little tiny windows and doors is actually very satisfying. So now that our 3 mushroom homes are in place, we're going to go about and build a world around them and add cute little natural details. So I'll start with some moss grass and maybe build a little fence over here for a garden. I used a grass tip and stippled in the moss, and then I used round tips and that same wood texture tip for little furniture and a log. And then I stippled some brown frosting on for a flower bed or maybe a garden bed. And then I used a star tip for these cute little bushes and vegetables. Star tips are so versatile, and it's neat that they give so much texture without a lot of work. For the chimneys, I piped the base on first in just a random color, and then I let it chill. Really making up the details as I went along was pretty fun. Just adding cute little nature details here and there and making the houses seem more lively with additional pieces. Now that the base of the chimney is chilled, I can go back and add the stones around the edge and top it off with a little border on top. When creating a very detailed buttercream design, or when making up a design as you go along, I would make sure you always have couplers in your bag. That way if you change your mind or you want to switch tips between colors, it makes things a lot easier. So I don't know what kind of berry bushes would be this tiny in real life, but I felt like we needed some cute little berries just for fun. So now that most of our details are in place, I'm going to start adding the ice malt grass and positioning it just how I like it to frame my little houses. I pressed it into the modeling chocolate on the cake board, and then I piped additional little buttercream bushes around it for support. Now the finishing detail, I wanted to add one big flower over the top of it to really drive home how little these mushroom houses are underneath their grassy canopy. So here's Smurfette again. We'll add her legs just directly to the board and then put her on top and let that buttercream chill in place so she's not falling over or going anywhere. So here's our finished village. I think it came together really cute. It's a little clumsy and cartoonish, but I feel like that really fits the vibe of the old Smurf cartoon. It's just fun, bright colors and cute little scenery. I think it would have been cute to add more Smurfs around the village doing different things just to make the cake seem more lively. I think I like the green mushroom house the best. Even though it didn't have additional windows, I like to think that the skylight let enough light in there. Did I forget to put extra windows on it? Yes, maybe, but that's okay. So I cut these after they had chilled for a while, so they were a bit firm. Sorry, Smurfette. I didn't mean to do you like that. Usually it's much easier to cut the cake after you've let it set out for a little bit. So there you have it. There's our little Smurf village, complete with 3 mushroom houses and all the details you could want. And I hope you enjoyed this more laid back and chill buttercream design. Thanks so much for watching.